Hi, I'm Mehul Harry with Developer Express, and in this video we're going to take a look at two new properties of the ASPX menu called the Enable Callbacks and Enable Callback Compression. Both of these properties allow you to get better performance out of a menu that has several items within it. And they're really quite easy to enable. And in this video, we'll take a look at how we can not just enable them, but measure the performance of a site using a tool called Fiddler. So let's take a look. Before getting into the Enable Callbacks property, let's first take a look at what it's like without callbacks. So in the ASPX menu demo, if we take a look at the tabbed menu, what happens is this page has a lot of controls in it. There's a round panel, a nav bar, and here's the menu. And what we can see is right away, when we show the menu, we have all the top level items that we want to see. And these sub items don't need to be really loaded when the page is first loaded. So what the Enable Callbacks feature will allow us to do is load these sub item menus after everything else is done loading on the page. So let's take a look at how we can do this. I've started with a blank page here, and we'll drop an ASPX menu control into the form. And I also want to use an XML data source. The file we'll use for the XML data source we'll actually use from this tabbed menu demo, which you can find in our program files demos folder. I'll right click on app data, add existing item, and I'll navigate to the DevExpress folder. I'll import in the menu tabbed menu.xml file. And finally, we can specify which data file to use, like the tab menu. I also want to add an XPath expression to filter to the item that I'm looking for within the XML file. Now we'll bind our ASPX menu to the XML data source, and we're all ready to go. Let's take a look at it without the Enable Callbacks property. The first thing we notice is the menu loads up right away, and it'll load up all of the sub items as well. But as you can see that if we're not displaying the items, we don't really want to show them. So to enable callbacks, we'll simply select the ASPX menu and enable callbacks to true. Now let's take a look at it in action again. Now, when the menu is first loaded up, the submenu items are not loaded. But we can't really see this because what happens is when the menu will wait till the page is done loading all of the items, and then it will do a quick callback to load up the rest of the submenu items. So let's add a little delay to our page load. We'll add a if_is_callback method, and we'll use the system threading sleep method. We'll add about 4 seconds, and let's test it again. Now, before the callback is done, a delay of 4 seconds will be added. As you can see, the submenus are loaded after the callback delay has been completed. Now let's see what kind of performance benefits we get. I'll load the Fiddler debugging tool, which you can find at by Googling on Fiddler. The first thing I want to do is I want to actually turn Enable Callbacks off to see what kind of page volume there is, HTML volume there is. The first thing I'll do is disable callbacks and rerun the site. Now when testing against localhost, you want to add a period so that it shows up in Fiddler. We can see on initial page load that the amount of bytes received are about 617,000. Now, let's enable callbacks and see what kind of performance we get. Once again, I'll add my dot so it'll be caught inside of Fiddler. Now, the initial page load is only 256,000. As you can see, the amount of HTML first loaded is much less when you have enable callbacks on. Now, there is yet another property that may help you with performance, and that's Enable Callback Compression, which allows the callback to compress using gzip and deflate. So let's enable it and see what kind of performance we get. Now, Taking a look inside of ASPX menu again, we've gone down to 242, 845 bytes. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is if you don't actually have at least about 500 bytes, it may not be worth it to enable compression because you may not really get any value out of it. Say, for example, that your menu had several items within it, as well as images and more sub-items. And if the volume increases above 500 bytes, then you may want to consider using compression. So as you saw, the enable callbacks is a great way to get performance gain out of your website. And the enable callbacks compression feature is an even further way to gain some performance benefits. But it's important to remember that if the amount of data that you're compressing on that callback isn't more than 500 bytes, you won't really get a benefit out of it because there is a minor cost to compressing and deflating that data. Thanks for watching.